So hello guys, welcome to this video. So in this video, we are going to talk about Spring Boot. So this is not going to be a very in-depth video about Spring Boot. We are just going to be look at how to set up a basic Spring Boot project and use all the basic features it provides, and just build a very simple web app just to look into how Java can be used to develop web apps and all of this stuff. Basically, this is not the kind of videos that you find from me, like the in-depth AI related or projects related, DevOps related. This is like going to be much simpler than that. We are just going to be building a very simple web app which just contains few details about student management system, something like that. And the basic the intention about all of this is to just to look at how Spring Boot can be used to build web apps. You must have background with either like Node.js or some other backend technologies that you might be using, something like Go or Rust, maybe something like that. So those are much more popular with the beginners, like Node.js and all of those. But Java is not very Java in the sense Spring Boot is not very much uh, like uh, very much famous in terms of backend development for beginners, because a lot of people don't consider Java as a language in which you can build really cool applications or something like that. They just see it as something which uh, they can just learn and do DSA questions on it, and basically just practice it, just keep it up to the core Java part. But it can be it can go beyond that also. So the whole point of this video is not to make you learn Spring Boot from scratch. This is not like some crash course about it. This is just to build interest in you about Spring Boot, so that you can basically go through Spring Boot much more. They also have their docs. You can basically go through their docs also. They are really good in that. And you can basically go through other courses also on YouTube. And even if possible, I will also try to provide one later down the line. But this is just to show you how Spring Boot can be used and all. So what are we going to do is we are going to be building a very simple web application, a web app, and we are just going to be building the back end of it. There will be no front end as such. So we will be using Postman in order to connect with our backend that we have built. And basically, after going through this video, if you follow the exact steps that I give you, you will be able to create this application. And also, if you have already built some backends using Node.js or some other frameworks or languages, then you can basically build the same with Spring Boot also. You just need to be knowing little bit more knowledge about Spring Boot, and then you can go on. And for the front end part, I've not done anything because you can choose it for yourself. You can go with plain like JavaScript, sorry, uh, HTML, CSS, or you use some framework also like React, Angular, or something, or whatever you want. So that I leave it up to you, whatever you choose to display the data in the front end, because this is very simple. So in this course, in order to follow this, what you need to be having is IntelliJ. So either you can use IntelliJ, or another IDE that you can use is Eclipse. So in order to download IntelliJ, just search on IntelliJ and go to the page, and then basically just click on the download, and then basically you can download it for whichever system that you have. Right now I'm on Linux, so it's showing for Linux, but you can download it for other platforms also. So it depends on what kind of platform you're using. The same is for Eclipse also. So just search on Eclipse, and then basically you can download that also. So you can keep either of them downloaded. So let me tell you another thing is the Spring Boot project that we are going to be building. So that is a framework in Java, right? And Java coding is like supported in all of the IDs, right? In IntelliJ also, in Eclipse also. They support Spring Boot also. But the thing is that if you want to build a like Spring Boot application in IntelliJ IDEA, basically they want you to like opt for their I think their ultimate version, right? So you need the ultimate version in order to be like building Spring Boot application, Spring Boot projects. But that is like not mandatory. I will also show you work around that. Basically, how you can not use the ultimate one and just use the free community version and still be able to do whatever we are doing in the video. So either you can do that, or you can just go with Eclipse because it is fully open source and fully free. So you can choose that also because it supports everything related to Java development. And another like a small fact that I can tell you is basically Eclipse is so much suited for Java is another reason, not kind of the reason, but also a really good fact is that the Eclipse Foundation that manages and like maintains the Eclipse ID, they also maintain Java. So that is a good fact. So just choose one IDE for you and you're good to go. So in this video, we will be using Eclipse. So first of all, like before like going into the project, let's try to understand a few things. Okay, so basically let's just go with the flow, like what is Spring Boot and all. Let's actually search it up together and let's just learn it. Okay, let's just look at what do we have now. So Spring Boot is an open source framework built on top of the established Spring framework that simplifies the creation of standalone production grade Java applications with minimal configuration. Okay, so what happened before like Spring Boot? There was another framework known as Spring. Okay, if you search it, Spring framework. So if you see over here, release date. So Spring framework was released like more than 20 years ago, right? But the Spring Boot framework that came around roughly around 2014 or 2015. So that has been around 10 years or so. Now let's look at like why was like Spring Boot even created, like Spring was even created. So before Spring was created, Java has been like in existence like I think like in 1980s or 90s, somewhere around that time. So during those 10 to 20 years of time period, what happened is that in order to like build some Java applications, there were a lot of configurations that you need to be doing, a lot of overhead that you need to be handling. There was a lot of chaos, right? So basically, the problem was that in order to build just a very simple application, you need to be downloading a lot of jar files. Now, what are jar files? So, jar files, you search. Jar files are basically uh, a Java project, kind of like a zip file. It's just that it's specified to a Java project, right? It's a compressed package file format based on the zip format, but with specific functionality for Java applications. It aggregates multiple files such as compiled Java classes. So if you know a bit of Java, which is like required, like a prerequisite for this video, because I just want you to like uh, be curious about Spring Boot, not about Java. I require you to know that. So you must be knowing that when you like write the code and compile it, it basically gets like compiled into a dot class file. Your dot Java file becomes a dot class file. So all of those, like let's say you're building a project in which there are 100 dot class files. So if you want to like share it with some other person, you can't be like sharing all of those, right? If you want to share a folder with 100 pictures, so you don't share it, share the whole folder. You basically shrink it down into a zip file and then share it. So that's the whole concept. Now, the problem was that there were like lots of jar files that needed to be downloaded in order to like configure a very basic application basic application only. And there were a lot of configuration overhead also. You need to configure a lot of things. By configuration, I mean basically like doing some settings and all. Okay, like setting up the project and all. We will look into like today into like how you set up a Spring Boot project. That's like very easy. It's done very easily. You don't have to do anything in that. It's very easy. But in terms of like Spring, there are a lot of there are few overhead that you need to be handling. But if we were like not even using Spring framework, it would be like very difficult for us. So that was the problem that Spring saw. Now, why do we like need Spring Boot in that case? Now, Spring Boot has some special features that Spring framework did not have, right? So one of the very key feature is auto configuration, right? So basically, auto configuration means that what like when you were like using the Spring framework, you had to be doing less configurations than the earlier you can say raw Java, but the thing is that you still needed to be doing a lot of configuration, and that was like very much repeatable. It was not productive or creative work. It was just you doing the regular work, right? But the thing is that with Spring Boot you don't need to be doing that also. Spring Boot handles all of those stuff in the back, right? Then there's the starter dependencies. Okay, so it has the Spring starter dependency, which is like like you use in every Spring Boot project. So that basically gives you a very nice project structure to work with. All the dependencies that you might need to like get up a uh, basically a application Java application up and running. Then they have embedded servers also. Now you need to be like researching this on your own. Basically what if you don't know basically what is a server is, it's basically you can say it's like a service that basically can handle web requests, right? So that is like very simple, right? You need, another thing that you need to be researching is what are servlets in Java, right? What is Tomcat and all. We will be using that in our video also, but that will be used behind the scenes. We will be like not using that explicitly, but with Spring you needed to be like explicitly mentioning that what type of server that are you trying to use and all. Okay, but in Spring Boot they have embedded servers, so you don't need to like install the server separately, set it up separately, maintain it separately. Spring Boot does that for you. Another thing is that they have a lot of production ready features also. So why do we need production ready? Because Spring Boot is like used by almost all of the like by Spring Boot I mean Spring Boot, Java. This is used by almost all of the Fortune 500 companies. And right now, over the past few years, due to Spring Boot and due to its like very ease of working, a lot of startups even use them. It is used in very huge scalable applications that need like very like huge scalability. Okay, so they in that case Java Spring Boot is used a lot. So we do need production ready features, and Spring Boot provides that for us, right? And one of the like key features is that I mentioned that there's jar files, right? There's also another type of files which is known as WAR files. So those are basically web archive like files. Now, though the WAR files, they basically are specific to web projects, right? So the jar projects can be anything. Like let's say that you are building a CLI app, right? That can basically, let's say you're building Claude code in Java. So that will have a jar file. But let's say that you are building a web app. So that will have a war file, right? Now, one of the key features of this Java is that you just export that jar, that war file, and you can just use it probably like a doc, use it in a Docker container or something, and then scale it massively through Kubernetes or any kind of like auto scaling stuff and all those. Okay, so that's why Java is like extremely scalable. So when you need like huge scalability, but at the same time very simple to understand like systems also. And another thing is that Java is very much backward compatible. That means that if there's a bank, let's say JP Morgan is like using it. So even if they have written some part of their code, which is like 20 years older, so even that code will run in today's uh, environment also. There's a like as I mentioned, you need to be knowing Java for this video. So what do I mean by that is that even if they have some part of code which is written in even Java 1 also in version 1, it can still run in Java 25 also, the latest version. So that is why that is why the very big systems use them, because it is very much backward compatible. So it can be used for decades and decades without much changes in configuration. So that is why Spring Boot, and by now I think that you must be like knowing the very basics, like what is Spring Boot and all. Okay, so basically now we have understood what is Spring Boot, but let's uh, explore some features of Spring Boot. Like we can even go through their documentation also, because they might be providing that. So this is basically a lot over here, because we will be not going through a lot over like this. Okay, so we have went through auto configuration, then starter dependencies, and then embedded servers. We have not went through what is like Spring Boot actuators. So basically, let's read through it. This module provides production ready features for monitoring. It offers endpoints to check. So this is like basically the basic production ready features that you need in an application, like monitoring, observability, all those features, right? Externalized configuration. This is also like something that you might need to be researching more if you are interested. So this is like exactly not like I was looking at. So we can look at this. Basically, what I wanted to like explain to you is one of the like core, let's say, this is for concepts actually. So one of the like very core concepts of Spring Boot is basically IOC, then dependency injection, and all of this stuff. Okay, so first of all, IOC and dependency injection. So basically, what happens that you must be knowing that Java is an object-oriented programming language. So in Java, whatever we do, it has to be like through objects and classes, right? Whatever you are doing, whether you are trying to build a like whether you're just trying to print just a basic like simple hello world program, that also like needs to be done through a class and object only. You cannot do it through any other way, right? So as a developer, what your job is to like maintain a like life cycle of the class of the object, right? So you have to like maintain the whole life cycle of that object. So what does that life cycle looks like is basically, if we search for that, basically we will get a very nice kind of diagram. Okay, so if you look over here, so first of all, what we have, uh, okay, they don't like basically provide, okay. So first of all, our object is created, then it's like initialized. Uh, okay, this is like not like what I was trying to make you understand. But basically what happens is that the life cycle includes like first of all you create the class, then you create the object of that class, then uh, basically you are like doing some operations on that object, then basically you might be deleting that object, and a lot of other stuff also goes in between those lines also. So as a developer, when you are working on a web application or any other kind of complex application, your like sole job cannot be to be like handle the life cycle of a object or a class, because you have to like go beyond that. You have to like kind of like uh, work on things that are like require much more that are much more difficult in the sense. So these things are also like very much not like robotic, because they seem very like uh, it's like the same thing that you are doing in a loop, right? You are doing the same method creations, the same operations that you're doing on the objects and classes. So what Spring Boot helps us to do is that it has a concept known as inversion of control, IOC. So basically what it does is that it handles everything, all of the like class object cycle. It handles all of it on its own. You don't need to be like worrying about any of those. So basically, there's a container, IOC container, which is like the inversion of control container. So basically, what happens is that whatever classes that you have been like creating in throughout your project, all of those classes are inside that container. And whenever you need to like create an object, you don't actually mention that you need to be like creating an object. You just write your code, and it's like somehow like Spring Boot is scanning through the whole code, and it's just like sensing that whether we need to create a new object in this line or not. And if we do, we just create a new object from the IOC container, and we just use that instead of like letting the user create that. Spring Boot creates it automatically. So inversion of control, why is that name? Basically, the control that you had over the objects as a developer, that is like inverted right now. So Spring Boot has the control over that now. So that's why inversion of control, IOC container. Then we have the dependency injection. So basically, when you are like writing code, so your code might be like dependent on other packages or other classes or anything. So in like core Java, you need to be like mentioning everything step by step. But in Spring Boot, you don't need to be doing that. Spring Boot handles all the dependency checks for you, dependency injection. So it basically injects any kind of dependency that you might need. Okay. Then the IOC container that I was talking about. So basically, the objects inside that IOC container, they are referred to as beans. So those are Spring Beans, right? So basically, they are very simple. They are exactly the same objects that you were creating before Spring Boot in core Java. It's just that now that you are using the objects created by Spring, so those objects are known as beans. So that is what Spring Beans are. We have talked about auto configuration, starter dependencies, embedded servers, the annotations, right? So we will look at some annotations and all, and we have looked into these also. Okay, so I feel now that we have a bit understanding of what Spring Boot is, what Spring was. uh, People don't actually use Spring nowadays. They just go with Spring Boot and all of those stuff. And now we also like kind of have an idea of why you should be like at least looking through this video, if not like learning Spring Boot in very detail. Another like thing that might interest you is that uh, one of the like largest companies that like I mentioned that almost all the Fortune 500 companies use Spring Boot, but uh, like one of the largest companies, and that is like a streaming company. In terms of streaming, it is the largest company when search it. Basically, they all of the services, nearly all of their services are in like Spring Boot and Java. So they use Java in almost all of their services. Not like not actually like all of them, but like you can say like 80 to 90% of that. And just to like give you a hint, it's like the largest streaming platform in the world. So yes, so that might like interest you. So like I mentioned in the start, you need to be like downloading either IntelliJ or Eclipse. We will be following IntelliJ. So I have the like the ultimate version. So I will be like basically what happens is that if you have the ultimate version, you click on this new project, and if you just select this Spring Boot, you can be like seeing these options: Spring Boot, Maven, Jakarta, HTML, React, and all of those things. Like, but if you're like having the community version, you might not be able to see this. So first of all, I'm going to be like showing you how you can do this, and then basically I will tell you that how you can use the other way also. So I'm going to be naming this as, let's say, Spring Boot demo. Okay. So I'm going to be using Java. Of course, yes. Another thing also, of course, you need to be having Java on your system also. So we'll be using Maven, and for this, let's just use this. Let's just use this and Java 21, jar properties, and yeah, nothing else to change. Then next. Then basically in order to build a very simple app that we are web app that we are using, if you just go to over here, so first of all we will be needing Spring Web. Of course, as the name suggests, we will need it for sure. Another thing that we need is JPA. This is Spring Data JPA. I will explain it to you just a little bit later. Okay. Then basically, uh, like we are not building a very simple web application. Uh, yeah, it is very simple, but we will be like also connecting it with a MySQL database also. You can choose any kind of database that you want, but in our case, we will be using the MySQL. So we are like using MySQL is search MySQL. We are let's say using Postgres. So download the Postgres driver. We'll be using this and nothing else, and then create, right? So that got created, and now we have a project over here, right? Okay, so go over here, so go to main Java, then yeah, just to like check everything is working. Let's just write a simple hello world program to check whether it's working or not. So let's run it. Okay. Okay, so we will come into this part, what this means. Basically, in order to make you understand this, I will be needing to make you understand what is JPA and all of this stuff. So we will look into that. But for now, another issue is that if you guys do not have the ultimate version, then how you will basically run this. So for that, basically what you need to do is just search start.spring.io, go to this page. This is the Spring initializer page. Now what it does is basically, you see over here, we have a like boilerplate code for a very basic Spring Boot application, right? It has done all the configurations that needs to be done in order to like make a very simple Spring Boot application up and running. In the start also, like I mentioned that we have auto configurations, starter dependencies, all of those stuff, right? So this is like what Spring Boot helps us to do, right? It has automatically imported everything that we might need to like build a very simple web application, or basically a very simple Spring Boot application. Okay, so this is like right now not done by IntelliJ, right? One thing if you might have noticed is that if I click this once again, so project, if I go to Spring Boot, one thing that is it says is that server URL, and that is the same URL that we were on, right? Now what it does is that in the basically in the like the uh, ultimate version that we are using, it gives this version, it gives us this option to create a project, Spring Boot project. But in the backend, what it actually does is what we will do, what we will actually doing in this page, right? It just like uh, creates like creates a project with the configurations that we have set, and that's it. It just basically it's like whatever we are clicking over, like checking over here, it does the same over here, and it just clicks on generate and downloads it. So that's what basically this is doing. So basically what you can do is either you can do this, or you can basically go over to this uh, like website. Then we are going to be using Maven, Java 4 is fine. Let's say the same configurations that we were doing actually. Let's say Spring Boot demo, artifact demo, D1, uh, dependencies, we had Spring Web, then we had JPA, another one which we had MySQL driver, then generate. Okay, so now it will make me download it. So I have the zip file, I extract it, I go over here. Now what I can do is that if I go over to my IntelliJ, then I open it, second in my downloads. So I think it must be over here. If we don't have it, we do have it over here. Okay, new window. Okay, so if you go over here, if you look at this, and if I basically this is the same, this is the exact same thing, right? You go over here and go to me, then go to Java. You go over here, this is the exact same thing. If I just print hello over here, this also like have the same problem also. So this is like the same thing. Okay, basically that is the same thing. So basically in our case we are so I already have the ultimate version, so I will be using that. But in your case, basically you can use it through the Spring Initializer website also. Okay, so now we are good to go. So now we will be like building a very basic application. Okay, so for that basically, like I mentioned that when we were trying to run this, so we were getting some error, right? So in order to do that, we need to be like understanding a few terms. Okay, so we will be understanding them one by one. So let's say that you have a backend system, right? Okay, you have a backend over here, right? So what is like a backend famous for? A backend, or maybe more technically, like what is a like backend actually like responsible for? So a backend is like actually responsible for let's say that and trying to like fill some form on the front end, but the backend is the place where I will actually send this data to, and then basically like the backend will receive that data, and then it will be probably like save the data in the database or do some other processing with that, right? So that is like what the backend is like actually responsible for: receiving requests, then processing that request to do something, and then like do some operations on the database, and then basically return a response. So that summarizes everything that a backend does, right? So there are three parts, right? One, two, three, right? So the first part is that whenever the request comes, someone has to receive it, right? So the first part is like basically it just receives it, right? This layer that you see, it just receives it, and then it just takes that request and then throws it to this layer. This layer, what it does is that it just processes the request. Okay, processes it. Okay, then we have the third layer, which basically does database operations, right? So there are these three layers. Whenever a request comes, it first goes to this backend. Okay, so a user sends it in the request to this backend. So the backend first receives it, then it processes the request, then it does some DB operations, and then what it does is that it will send a response. Okay, so what happens, just to like recap, first of all a request hits the backend, then the backend like basically processes it, then it does some data operations on the database, then what happens is that this whole backend gives us a response. Okay, basically you can understand it this way, like if I am filling a form in the front end, so I'm basically sending that data to the backend. So first of all, the backend will receive it, then it will process it. Like basically, it can be like the backend checks whether the like the email is correct or not, it's in the correct format or not. Another thing could be like if I'm trying to log in through that form, so it will check whether my basically my password is correct or not. So how will it basically check that my password is correct or not? It will basically check that whatever password I have typed in that form and whatever password is stored inside the database for my user, is it the same or not? For that, first of all, it will need to check whether my actually like it actually exists on the database or not. So for all of those stuff, it needs to like interact with the database. So this backend also does some database operations also. Okay, now we have understood the three distinct layers. Now let's just coin terms for them. So the first one basically, which actually is like responsible for receiving the requests, that is known as the controller. Okay, then the second layer, which basically processes it, that is known as the service. Okay, then the data operations layer, which is like responsible for connecting to the database, interacting with it, that is known as the repository layer. Okay, now we understand like what is controller, service, and repository. Okay, so this is like a very basic backend architecture that maybe like a structure that these applications follow. So we have the controller which receives the request, then service which processes it, and then repository which does the database interaction part. Okay, so that is what we have. Okay, now this is where our problem is like relying over here, right? So if you see, like what we are trying to do is one of the thing, one of the things, like one of the dependencies that I made you add was basically Spring Data JPA. Let's like search about like what is like Spring Data JPA, right? So you search about it. Spring Data JPA is a framework that simplifies the implementation of data access layers in Java applications by reducing boilerplate code and building on top of the Java Persistence API specification. It is a much larger Spring Data family of products. Okay, now what is this basically JPA, or what is this Spring Data JPA? So if you just understand JPA, it's more than enough for you to understand what is like Spring Data JPA now. So we go down. So in our project over here, it's made you understand that there is a controller, there is a service, there is a repository. Now, basically what happens is that this repository layer that you see, like this layer is actually responsible for talking with the database, right? So if I have a database over here, let's say, so if I have a database over here, so this repository layer that you see, that is basically responsible for like communicating with this database, right? The controller will not talk directly with the database. The service will not talk with the database. Only the repository will talk with the database. Okay. So the thing is, let's now try to understand that how JPA was actually like introduced, why we need JPA, and why do we like use it in Spring Boot and all of this stuff, right? So let's take a very simple example. Okay, let's say that you are trying to build a let's say uh, AI code editor. Okay, let's say you're building a AI code editor, probably like something like Cursor or something. Okay, so for that, basically, what you are doing is that you are not going to be building LLM models of your own, right? You are probably going to be like using LLM applications, like LLM models of other companies, right? So there are options like if I search in AI API. So if I go over here, so OpenAI like provides their own API through which they you can basically basically use their models like GPT-5, GPT 5.1, GPT 5.2, all of those stuff. You can use Claude also through Anthropic. There's another platform, Open Router. Okay. So if you go to Open Router, so in Open Router you can, using just one API key, you can use any model that you want. Okay, this is like a centralized like a way, right? So most of the applications that are built on top of these like which are basically known as AI wrappers, so basically they are built on top of these LLM models, right? Now these LLM models that we have, these, so basically most of the people use Open Router for this. So what you are doing is that in this application, whatever AI related work that you are doing, you are basically kind of like using or outsourcing that like AI part to Open Router, or probably like the model that you're trying to use. Okay. So we have Open Router over here. Okay. Now, why do people use Open Router so much? Now, let me give you a very like easy example. So if we go to Anthropic API, okay, Cloud Developer Platform, and if I go over here, now let's say that this AI code editor platform that you are wanting to create, in it's like Cursor, right? So in Cursor, you get a lot of options, right? You get the option to choose, let's say, the open AI like ChatGPT 5.1 for coding, or even you can use Claude 4.6 Opus, any model that you want, right? But if we will if we were like to like have separate APIs for OpenAI, then for Claude, then it will be a lot of hassle, a lot of chaos. Not chaos, but a lot of hassle, a lot of like overhead that needs to be managed, that needs to be maintained over the time in order to like having a lot of different models, right? So if you want to like let's say add let's say Grok from XAI, so you need to sign up for their platform also, then get that API from there, and then basically you will only then you can basically integrate that within your platform, right? Within your AI code editor. So that is like a lot of work that's need to be done, right? But Open Router solves that for you, right? How is basically for any type of model, okay, it doesn't matter what model you are trying to use, you need to do what you just will need to create one single API key, and you will just use it on your application. And even if the model is from OpenAI or Anthropic or Google or Facebook or anyone, you will be able to use that model no matter what. So Open Router is basically a centralized API in order to manage a lot of models, right? So the same way, JPA is also the same way, right? So let's say in a repository layer, we are, let's say when we were like starting out with the project, like in our case also, we thought that let's start out with MySQL database, right? But later down the line, let's say we want to migrate to, let's say Postgres, or let's say some non-SQL database or some other database, right? SQL based only, relational database only, or let's say some other database. So in that case, whatever code that we have written in our repository layer, that needs to be changed, right? In our example, what was happening is that when you are trying to have the OpenAI model, you need to go through their platform and then like write code specifically for OpenAI. For Claude, it's specific to their platform. So for the same is in our case also. For MySQL, you have some specific code. For Postgres, you have some other specific code. Let's say for Oracle DB, you have some other specific code. So when we are like doing this, there's a lot of maintenance that we need to do over the long time. So that's where JPA comes into play, Java Persistence API. Okay, so JPA helps us to solve this. It is like the open router of the database connections, right? So it basically sits between any type of database that you want to use and your repository layer. Okay, another term which is used for the repository layer is also known as data access layer. Very simple name, right? It basically accesses data from the database. Yeah, so it's just the data access layer. So now we know what JPA is. Okay, uh, we can use it to connect to any kind of database that we want to connect to, even if it's like MySQL or Postgres or MongoDB or anything, right? But in order to use JPA, you need to be like mentioning like which kind of database that you want to connect to, where is that database hosted, what is the username and password in order to log into that database, what is the name of that database, and all of those sort of things, right? So like when we're like starting our application, you saw this error, right? It said basically failed to configure a data source. Okay, so basically what is JPA complaining to us is that, okay, I can connect to any kind of database that you want, but you have not mentioned what is the data source. So to which database I must be connecting. So it's saying URL attribute is not specified and no embedded data source could be configured. We will be not talking about embedded data source. It is you can explore it on your own. It is also very simple to use. One of the examples is H2 database, so you can use that. So the reason is fail to determine a suitable driver class. Okay. So how do you tell JPA that, okay, this is my database, these are my details and all of this stuff? So for that, you go over to main, then go over to this resources. So if I just the video, let me actually zoom in a bit. Okay, over here you must be seeing. So what I did, first go to source, then go to main, then go to resources, and then you will find this application.properties. So if you open this, you will be seeing that right now this is not actually empty, but it just has a little just a single line, and it makes sense, right? The application name of the Spring Boot application name is Spring Boot demo. We chose that when we were creating the new project, right? We chose it over here, right? So that is what this line means. Okay, so can we mention to JPA that what do we need to do over here? So yes, we can do. So what we will do is that if we just write spring dot data dot JPA, uh, no, I think it just works with, yes, it is data source actually. Data source, then first of all, let's define the URL. So what is going to be the URL? So it follows a very common pattern, which is JDBC, and then whatever database that we are using MySQL. If you are using Postgres, so it will be Postgres. Okay, so it will be MySQL. Then basically local host, and then basically whichever port the database is running on. It's MySQL runs on 3306, Postgres runs on 5432, and so on. If you are using some cloud database like Supabase or like some other database platforms providers, Neon DB and all of those, so in that case you will mention that. Okay, then the name of the database. So let's go to our MySQL workbench. So in order to make this work, make sure that you also have MySQL in your system. And even if you don't have the MySQL workbench, just look into how you can create a very basic root user in MySQL, create some database and all. We will using JPA, we do not actually need to write any SQL queries because JPA handles all of that in the behind the scenes. Okay, but it's good to know that, right? So I will connect to this. Okay, or let's say I clear this. Okay, so let's see. Let's first create a new database, right? This Spring Boot. That's a lot of this. Spring Boot demo. Right? And let's use that database. Let's see how many tables do we have. None actually. Okay, so my database is created. So what I will do is that I will mention the name of that database. So our database URL is now configured, right? And if we go, what's the next thing that we need to like say? So let's just mention this, like in our like error, it said application failed to start, failed to configure a data source, URL attribute is not specified. Let's run it again. Let's see. Now that we have mentioned the URL, let's see now does it work or not. So this time, as you can see, the application actually kind of like started, but not fully. So what it says is that unable to obtain this connection, access denied for this user using password. No, because we have not like actually passed the password or actually like passed the username on top. We will pass that. So spring.data source username. So my username is my name. And we will write the driver last name later. Then we have a password that is also my name. Okay. Let's try to run it once again. Let's see what happens. Okay, so this time it actually did work. Okay, but this problem is that this problem you might not see in your machine unless you have Tomcat on your machine. So what happens is that I have Tomcat on my machine, so I need to stop that. Just a second. Just a second. Okay. And let's see, does this work? Okay, so our hello is showing now. Okay, so another thing that we do need to mention over here, but that is like the thing is that you don't like actually uh, get the error right now, but you might get the error later down the line. So it's good to like have that configured. So that is basically the driver name, right? So in our case, it's .mysql. Think this works. This is search it on the net. We hit correct one. Yeah, I think it's the right one. Okay, so now we are good to go. If I once again run it, so yes, just seeing the hello. So our application is right now starting. Okay, it's right now not a web application, but we will make it. Okay, we will go one step like one step at a time. Okay, so now we have a very basic application. So now we will actually move on to the part where we actually create some like web endpoints. Then we will test them on like Postman and all of the stuff, and then we will like, actually see like how Spring Boot can be like used to create these like applications that you might be already created in Node.js or some other frameworks. So yeah, let's move on to that part. So now we will be like actually building the application. So now let's start out with the architecture that like I had explained to you, right? So we will like build the whole application in this format only. We will have a controller, we will have a service layer, we will be having a repository layer that basically uses JPA in order to connect to our database, right? We have like already set up the connection of the database. It's just that we will use it to use it in our repository layer in order to like actually do all the processing and all of this stuff, right? So first of all, we will be like building the repository layer, then the service layer, then the controller. Why is that? Because we see the controller layer actually depends on the service layer. Then the service layer actually depends on the repository layer. The repository layer basically depends on the database. So our database connection is done now. Our repository is like free to access the database and all of this stuff. But how will it actually access that? So that's what we will be looking at right now. So in order to do that, let's just close this application because we will not need that right now. Okay, let's remove this so we won't get it all the time. Let's close this. So what we will be doing is inside Java. So I have this package con.strengthen. So if you don't know what packages are, that's basically just the subfolder in where you like arrange the code. So like basically if there's like a controller, so you create a separate package for that. For repository, you create a separate package for that. So like that. So we'll be creating a new package for that. So just right click on com.strengthen, whatever package you have, then click on new, then click on this package. So our package name is going to be repository, right? So inside repository, we want to create what? We want to create a Java class, okay? And let's like name this. So what? Let me just explain to you what we are trying to build. It's a very simple web app. We are just building the backend, in which basically we are going to build a very simple student management system, in which basically you can just like add students, like create students, fetch the students, basically update the details of any student, then basically you can also delete any student from the database. The students have names, the students have like uh, their age, their roll number, their email, their phone, a lot of other stuff, right? So that's what we are trying to build today. Okay. So I'm going to name it as student repo. Okay. Now I'm going to delete this part. Okay. We will look into it, like what we will actually writing in this. Okay. But before that, like I mentioned that we are going to be like build like working with the student data. So that's why for that we basically need to create the student class, right? So that we can actually work with it. So for that, basically what you need to do is that we need to create a just a second, we need to create a new package for that. And I'm going to name it as model, right? Inside model, I'm going to create a new Java class, name it as student, right? So what is this student going to have? So first of all, the student is going to be having a name. Keeping everything as right. He will have a name. He will have a age also. The student will have a age. The student will. Let's actually put the roll number at the top. The student will have a roll number, right? The student will have, let's say, email. The student will have, let's say, roll number, and a lot of other stuff that we can do, but let's just keep it simple right now. Then uh, the reason the due to the fact that these are private, so I need to create the getter and setter methods for them. So you can either do it this way, that basically you can do something like that roll number, and take the roll number, then do it like say this dot roll number equals to roll number, then for public get your roll number. So for that basically I just return the roll number, so the return type will be int. This will be what. So you can either do this for all of them, or one thing which you can do is just click right click, then go to generate, then go to getter and setter, and select all of them, click on OK. It will generate those for you, right? So why do I why have I like kept these as private and not public? There's a reason for that. Why do we do that in Spring Boot? That is something like related to like IOC, which we learned in the like starting about Spring Boot. So basically, like what happens is that, so in IOC in Spring Boot, what we like uh, basically learned is that it's like a way through which Spring Boot takes control of the objects that you that like before that the developer had to like manually control them. So for that, basically, Spring Boot IOC container cannot create the whole object at once, right? So let's say that this student class, if it's trying to create an object of that, basically a bean of that, so that bean will contain these informations, right? But the thing is that IOC container cannot create the whole bean with all of the content at once. Okay, it does not have all the content at once. It will try to set it one by one. So we can't have a like a constructor which gets all the value like in the basic value, like in the basic uh, objects that we uh, were dealing in core Java. So that's why we use this, right? We use the setter getters. Okay. Now another thing is that basically I mentioned to you that in when we are like when the IOC container actually creates the objects for us, when Spring Boot actually creates objects for us, they are known as bean, right? So how do you like tell a Spring Boot that okay, this class that you see, okay, let me just give you an example, right? Like over here, so what I can do is that I can let's say create a student, and then let's say I set his roll number 01, set his name, okay, set his age, set his name, then set his phone number, okay. I don't know how many details are there. Okay, so we have a roll number, name, age, email, and phone number, right? Now let's say if I come over here, let's create a toString function also. So we will create on generate, then click on toString, then okay. So what a toString basically does is that when you are like basically trying to print some object directly like this, so if you don't like override this toString method of that particular class, it will basically just print very random thing like the address at where that object is created, but you can override that to like display the object this way. So if I run this, see my object over here. Okay, as you can see, I basically have this student over here, roll number, name, age, email, phone number, right? So the thing is, if you notice in this code, we created the object ourselves, right? Okay, we basically created the object ourselves, but we don't want to do that, right? We just want to use Spring in order to create that object for us. How do we do that? So first of all, this thing that you see over here, Spring application dot run, Spring boot demo application dot class, then arguments, all of the stuff. Basically, first of all, we need to cache that. And in order to cache that, we will use text. This one. Then I'm going to name it as context. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, instead of new student, what I'm going to do is context dot get bean, and then I'm basically creating a student dot class. Okay, so basically what I'm doing over here is I'm telling Spring Boot is that just create a bean for me which is of the student class. Okay, now basically if you do this line, if you just write this particular line, you won't have to create the object yourself. You won't have to do like the data cycle, like the life cycle object, like the whole life cycle of that app, class of that object, right? So you don't have to manage that. You don't have control over that right now. Spring Boot does, and that's what basically we know as beans, right? If I run this, you will see a bug. You will see a error. Okay. So the error says that you see over here, no qualifying bean of type con.model.student available. But the thing is that we created this class, right? So why can't it create a bean of that? So we need to like use some annotations in order to like mention to Spring Boot that you can use this class for creating beans, but you cannot use that class for creating beans. Okay, so for that you just need to use this particular annotation, which is component. Okay, now if you run this once again, it will work just the same way. So if you see over here, mm, we did not actually created the stud class ourselves, right? We just used Spring Boot to do this, right? So we just did context.get bean and then the whatever bean that we wanted. So instead of writing this, what you can, another thing that you can do is you can keep a name for this. Okay, so name equals to, so yes, it's value. So value equals to, let's say, student. Okay, then what you can basically do is that you can name it as we at the name as student. But the thing is that if you see it, it returns an instance which may be shared or independent of the specified bean. Basically, what it does is that it returns an object, but you have to like infer the type of that object yourselves. So for that, basically you can do something like this. Now this will work. If I run it once again, I should get the same output, right? So I'm getting the same output as before. Now another thing is that if I just remove this, another thing is that if I basically mention this, so what this basically does is that I want to create a bean of this name. Okay, so it will go scan it and then it will basically see that okay, this is the bean, and I want to return that bean as this one. So I want to infer the type of that bean as this one. So earlier we were doing like typecasting, but now we can use this also. Or else you can just remove this part also. It will still work, right? So this was also already working and I don't even need the name for it, right? Okay, so that works. Okay, so now I think you understand a little bit about like beans, like IOC container. So all the these beans that you see over here, all of those are like basically inside the IOC container. Another concept that I want you to like see is prototype, it's scope. Okay, so what scope is basically, now one thing I want you to understand. Okay, this is C. So I have this student 2. Let's say create, I remove this. Let's say create a student 2. I try to print that. Okay. Now what do you think the output will be? So I have this stud for that I have these values. I have this stud2 which I just created right now. I'm trying to print that. Let's see what happens. So if I go over here, as you can see, the one of the you can say this can be like surprising for you, shocking for you to see that this stud2 object that we have created, it is the same one as this previous object, this stud object. Now why is that? The thing is, when you are creating this bean and when you are creating this bean, they are actually the same bean, even if you are creating different variable names, because variable names actually do not matter in this case. It is just pointing to the same bean. So the bean is for this bean we are basically creating the object just once, and we are just using that whenever we want to create that basically refer to that bean. Okay, create a new object of that. Okay, so we can change that ourselves also, because it can be the case that for student data, it's very this is not desirable. Okay, I want to create multiple different students with multiple different roll numbers, names and everything. So this is not desirable. Okay, so how do I do that? So what can you do is that over here in student, just mention the scope, and by default the scope is actually singleton. Okay, so even if I mention this, it will be the same. So singleton scope, what it means is basically this bean that you have over here, the object of that bean will be created only once and it will be reused throughout all the time. Now, just to prove to you, let's just say that I'm not printing this. Let's just do one quick hack. Is let's say I create a constructor for this, an empty constructor, and in this student object date. Okay, so let's run it once again. So if you see, by default you might be thinking that we are creating the object of that student class twice. You see over here, this actually did not got called for some reason. Okay, let's do one thing. Okay, the thing is, this will not work. Okay, because I think so this will work. Let's see if we run it once again. Okay, no worries about that, but we have proved that with our earlier example also. Okay, if we go back over here and we go back over here, we proved that basically both of these objects are the same, right? So if you see over here, even without setting the values of this stud2, I got the same values as the previous object, the stud object. Now to change that is basically I change the scope as echo type, and then we basically run it once again. Now you will see that for my student one, I see this, that roll number is something this and this which I said, but for the second one, the roll number is 0, name is null, age is 0, email is null, phone number is null. Okay, so what happened is that I have not set the basically the properties of this one, so that's why it's null and 0, the default values of this, right? So now I hope that you get the very core concepts of this, because we will be dealing with this. Okay, so what do you think? Do we should we keep this as prototype or should we move to singleton? we should keep it as prototype, right? Because we want to create multiple like beans of that student class, and we can't have the just a single one, right? It will create problems. Okay, so I think this is enough to make you understand, so I'm going to clear that. And okay, and now we will actually let's close this, and now we will actually like creating the application. Okay. Okay, so now I have this student class, and now I have mentioned it as like a bean that we can use, a bean to basically Spring Boot. We have also like I've also like explained to you what that scope thing actually means, or that scope annotation actually means. Okay, now we can actually build this student repo. Okay, so the student repo layer that we are going to use, it's through JPA, right? And if you just if you can like you can look more into it, but for this we basically create just a interface, right? We can name it anything we want, but in our case we have already chosen one, which is student repo, and we just need to extend just one single thing, okay, which is JPA repository. And we just need to mention two things. First of all, for which like for which kind of data we want to store in a database, that is student, and what is the type of the basically the primary key that we are using for this table. So for that is basically, if you look over here, we're using like if you look over here, we will be using the roll number as the like the primary key, so that roll number data type is int, so we will write integer, and then that's it. Actually, we don't need to do anything else over here. Okay, so that works. Okay, so like just to explain this to you a little bit more. So we have just created a student repo interface that basically extends a JPA interface. If I click over here, so it's a public interface. So there are a lot of functions over here. There is like numerous functions that you can use. Okay, so we will be using that in our service layer and in our controller layer also. So we will look into all those. But to explain this part over here, so basically what happens is that we are using JPA, but not like what is happening is that we are not using like just JPA. We are using an ORM with JPA also. So what this ORM is basically, if you like have like ever worked with like Prisma in Node.js or something else. So basically, Prisma is an ORM that basically helps. An ORM basically helps us to is like a middleman, which basically helps us to like even if I don't know the query language of the database, I can query the database. I can like manage the data of the database without actually knowing the query language, because I can basically use the like the middleman, which is basically the ORM. So what it does is basically it is a object relation like manager mapping, right? So what is the object relation mapping part actually means? So let's say that I want to like create a like student table, right? Or let's just like talk about the rules, and then let's then it will like actually make much more sense for. So whatever class that we have mentioned, like student, so that will be like treated as a table. Then all of the like uh, like like member attributes, okay, all of the attributes that the class has, like roll number, name, age, email, phone number, all of these will be treated as the columns, right? Okay, basically this student is a table and all of these are columns, and for each new object that you created, that is basically treated as a new row in the in the table, right? So when we like were creating in this one, so whatever data that we entered, that will be treated as a new row or new entry in that table. Okay, so that is basically what ORM is. You can like look into more. Okay, we are basically using Hibernate in this case because that's basically what Spring Boot and JPA uses it. Uh, so yeah, and another thing is that uh, okay, we will look into that. Like there's actually a setting that we need to do in our application properties to like actually see some of these like steps that is being done in the background, like how the these like tables are being actually created by mapping these and all those stuff, right? So you see, this part is done now. We have created a way to actually talk to our database. Database is up and running. Our repository layer is up and running. Now we will actually create the service layer. So for that, I will create a new package and name it as service. Okay. Then inside service, we will create a new class. Let's say I name it as student service, right? Okay. Okay. Another thing before that, we mentioned that we will be like using like this uh, like basically this uh, repository layer that we have created, and we will be like treating the student like class as our, you know, like we will map our student class to our database. So for that also you need to do some annotations. So for that, basically need to mention that this student class that you have over here, this is an entity, right? Now, when I mention this as an entity, basically that means that I want to treat this class as a entity in my database. Now, what does the entity means? It basically means that it's like a table in my class, a table in my database, right? Now, if I see over here, then the problem is that it says persistent entity student should have primary key. The problem is that whenever you create a new entity, a new table in your database, it needs to have some primary key that differentiates all the entries, right? So for that, we had like decided that roll number is going to be our primary key. So in order to mention that, I'm just going to be using this annotation, and that's it. Okay, now that works. Now we can actually go and build our service layer. Okay, we can build a student service. Okay, before building a student service, let's just stop it once and let's just run it once. Okay, let's see what happens if it's working or not. Okay, let's. I did not see any logs because we have not added any logs. Let's just check once that whether we have any tables in our database or not. So we don't have any tables right now. So thing is, we mentioned to our repository layer, right? We mentioned to our repository layer over here, over here, that this is like a repository and this is what you need to map to a database, but we do not see any like any database, any table created over here in our database, right? So for that, one of the reasons is that first of all we need to mention this as a repository. Okay. Uh, then the next thing is that other thing is that we need to do a minor setting in our application property That is basically what happens is that right now, basically the JPA, basically the ORM basically expects that you have already these tables in your database and you're just mapping them. Okay, but we don't want to do that. We basically want to say to like JPA that if you don't find those tables in the database, then just create them. That is basically spring dot data dot jpa dot it's I think it's jpa dot ddl. Yes, dot hibernate dot ddl auto, and we will want to keep it as update. Right. Another thing I want to enable is that whenever any kind of SQL queries the basically the our ORM is writing, we want to see them in our console also, so that we basically can see that what is actually happening in the back. For that, basically what you can do is spring.jpa dot show SQL equals to true. Okay. Now if I run it once again, let's just look at the screen once. Now you see here, there's this line over here, right? Hibernate, create table student, roll number integer, not null, age integer, not null. Then basically email, varchar, name, varchar, phone number, varchar, primary key, roll number, and then that's it. Okay. So it basically wrote this particular query, right? Now if I go back to my database, I run it once again, I see this student over here, right? I describe this student. So I have roll number, age, email, name, phone number, right? So now we can confirm that basically our database is getting connected with our our application, and we can retrieve data. We can retrieve the data now that we are now successfully connected to the database. Okay, so we will do that in our student service. But this we had to done so that we can see this. Now this Hibernate that you see over here, Hibernate is actually a ORM. If you search Hibernate Java, you see over here, Hibernate is an open source ORM framework for Java that simplifies interaction with relational database by mapping Java objects to database tables. Very simple thing, right? I have this object, I have this class over here. So Hibernate is an ORM which will basically map this to a table, which mapping basically means that it will basically create a table that basically is like a representation of this class. Okay. Now in our student service, we will do some data related jobs, right? We now have a repository layer, so we can do like all the operations, okay, like creating new like students and all, updating them, basically the CRUD operations, right? Let's try that. So for that, basically I'm going to create a new method. Uh, let's say that returns nothing for now, and it's create student, and I just pass a student object. So I import that, and then basically also need to like add the student here. So let's import that also. So what it says is not public. Okay, so I need to make that public. Okay, now it works. Now we are going to use the concept of Spring Boot that I mentioned in the start, the very basic concepts, beans, right? Dependency injection and all of those stuff. I use a container. So in our case, when we were doing this, what I did is context.get bean and then student.class. But we will not do that. Basically, what we are trying to do is create an object of the repo class. Okay. And also basically that object class, that like repo object that we are creating, we don't want to manage the object ourselves. We want Spring Boot to do that. So for that, we need to basically use beans. So for that, basically what we can do is we can just use a annotation that we have, which is auto wired. Okay. Okay. Auto wired must be okay. Valid bean. Okay. So I want basically the error is that in this class that you see, student service, this is actually not a like a valid like bean that we have, right? This is a normal class. Like if we go to the student repo, this is actually a repository, as you can see. If you go to repository is actually a component, right? And what do I mean by component? Basically component we use whenever we want to like use it as a bean in our whole Spring Boot project, right? So one thing is that we can either use like component over here, or another thing which we can use, which is better for this, is service, right? So you see where field injection is not recommended. We can ignore that for now. Okay. Okay. So now this works. Okay. Add service is working. So this is also like the same thing as component also. It's just that if you want, you can look to it more. So now what we will do is let's have the student object. I want to, let's say, store it in my database. Right? So let's see. Now, as you can see, this repo that I have nothing over here, right? So how come this has so many functions, right? So these exist because the thing is that we have extended this JPA repository, right? So when we want to like create something, save it in the database, we use something known as save. And inside over here, we just mention the object, which is a student. Let's try this out. So let's say student, or it's actually try it over here, maybe. Okay. Okay. Can go back over here, right? So I have this contact, I have this student, right? Then basically I can do student service also. Service equals to context dot get b, then student service dot class, student class, then basically service dot create student, and then passing start, and then let's say new student created and DB. Okay, let's test it out. Let's see if it works. Okay, we can see new student created and DB. And one thing you remember that we said Spring JPA show SQL true. So it will show all the like basically the queries that is Hibernate is actually running in the background, right? So it ran two queries, right? So first of all, it ran a select query, then it ran a insert query. Okay. why not just the insert one, is basically the save method that we have in the repo, in the JPA repository, that basically is used for both inserting and updating. Okay, so it will, if the basically the entry, if it already exists, it will just like update it, and if it does not exist, it will insert it, right? In this case, if I go over here, I do select star from student, you can see my data has been entered over here, right? So in this case, basically this select query did not return anything, so it inserted that. Now let's say I maybe change my uh, phone number, right? Let's say something like this, and let's say I run it once again. So this time, as you can see, it ran the select query once again, and this time it got the student in that particular data entry. So this time it did not do insert, instead it did update, right? So if I go to my TV, now you can see the phone number starts with 94. Now it starts with 7. That's the updated number, and nothing else has changed. Okay, very simple. Now can we do some other methods also, like probably like get student, or get all students, delete student. Okay, very easy. So first of all, let's do fetch all students. Okay, so it will not return void, it will return a list of the students, list of students, and I will just return a report, or it has a method which is find all, and that's it. Okay, now let's not try to create this object. Let's not try to save it. Okay, let's just try to print this service dot fetch all students. Okay, so it should just fetch one student, right? Fetch it tab. Okay, so it is doing this. Okay, nice, very nice. So this is working. Okay, so we are now fetching all the students. Let's say I want to fetch just one student, or yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to return a student object, right? And let's say I want to fetch student, and for that, let's say I'm fetching it, let's say by roll number. Okay, so what I can do is report.find by ID, and should be just roll number. Now the thing is, it does not return a student object. You see over here, it returns optional. Now why is that? Is basically it returns optional because it could be the case that that particular student is not found. So in order to like not do in order to like resolve null pointer exception, that's why it returns a option. It returns an option instead of the student. Okay, so how we can resolve this is either we can return it as a option, or we can do something like this, or else basically if we find the student, return it, return that student, or else basically you can do something like this. Okay, just create a new student and then just return that. Okay. So if I actually close this one, okay, now let's say I just fetch student, and let's say the roll number is 101. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I get the details of the student. Let's say it's 102. So they should create a new object with the default values, right? It is working perfectly. Now let's say instead of like fetching by name, sorry, instead of fetching by ID, I want to fetch by let's say name or something else. For that, basically I can do public student, let's say uh, uh, let's say fetch by name, right? So I write string name and let's say what do I return. Now for this, if you see, if I do repo dot find by, I don't have anything like find by name or something like that, because it should not have that, right? Because for each database the fields are different. Okay, so for that we need to create that ourselves. So what we will do is keep it public. It will return a student, and let's name it find by name, and then just enter the name. Now we don't have to mention anything else. I'm just see the magic over here. Name over here. Let's try this out. Fetch my name. Okay. Let's say and let's see if that works. So that actually worked. Now how did it actually work is that this method that we created, find by name, so basically Hibernate makes it so much easy for you in a way that basically you don't even need to like actually mention that which field you are searching that. You are just mentioning that inside the method name, find by, and then the basically whichever like field you want to find. Another thing that I want to show you is, let's say I do this. This will not work because my full name is something else over here. It will try to match it completely. So it is saying null. Now, what if I I do not want to match it fully, because of course in most of our search cases we don't want to match it fully. So we can do something like this. Contain, contain, okay. So if we do this, let's copy this, paste this. Now if I run this once again, now as you can see, I get this too, right? And another thing is, let's say instead of like, let's just consider that instead of a student you have a product. So you want to search some keyword inside the product name or in the description or in the brand name or something like that. So what you can do is you can write something like this, or by, let's say, description, and that should also be contained, okay, because that should also not match the exact description. Okay, and this is case insensitive. Okay, so that will work with whatever type of small case or uppercase you are using, right? So now fetch by name, fetch by ID, and those stuff are working. Now let's also like try to update, because update is also working. So I can basically name it something like create or update student. So this works. So of the CRUD operations, we have done C, we have done R, we have done U, sorry. Now we just need to do delete, uh, or yeah, let's just do not return anything for this actually. Delete student, student, student. That's also very simple. Just pass the object. That's it. Let's actually try to just delete Okay, I think we need to bring that object back. Let's bring that object back. Okay, so delete. See, so it will not print anything. Okay, but it did printed this, that delete from student. So first of all, it's try to see, okay, whether the entry is actually present. Okay, otherwise it, if we just do this, it will give some error. So I do this right now, nothing is present. Okay, so if I just run this once again, will catch that error. Okay, and it will not cause the application to close, right? Because it is first like seeing whether it's already present in the database, and only then it will like try to delete them. Okay, so now our service layer is done. Our basically our repo is also done. Now we only need to create a controller which basically can handle the web requests. So right now that is the only thing which is left in our like uh, full full project that we are doing, very simple one, so that we can basically use it over here on Postman in order to do everything that we are doing over here in our through our CLI. So instead of that, we will use the basically the uh, web requests to do that. So that is going to be our next focus. So we will be going to that. So now like actually build the controller layer that I was like explaining in this. So repository is done, service is done. Now let's build the controller. Okay, so the controller is like actually responsible for talking to the like the service layer and to handle the basically the requests incoming from the web, right? So it is kind of like something like this that we are trying to do, but not in the CLI. We want to like accept web requests, right? So let's try to build that. Let's remove this and let's close this. Actually, let's close this also. uh, let's close this also. Now let's create a new package for the controller. Let's say controller, and inside controller I want to create a new Java class, student controller. Okay, now let's see what it is actually, right? So in order to use this as a controller, we need to mention this as a controller using the annotation. Then the next thing we want to do is that we want to like have a list of uh, URL mappings, right? So like for the slash student, I want to uh, fetch data of the student. For slash product, I want to fetch the product details and all of this stuff, right? So for that, give the URL mappings. So you must be knowing that there are like 3, 4, 5 types of requests. There is so if you go over to Postman, there is get, post, put, patch, delete, add options. The most commonly used are get, post, put, delete. Get is for fetching any kind of data. Post is for basically uh, like uh, like passing some like data to the controller and to create something. Basically put is to basically update something, and delete, as the name suggests, delete something, right? So basically we have those uh, like basically the URLs sorry, the different types of methods. So we need to map those methods with the URL that we want. So for that, we basically have a lot of types of mappings, like for the different types of methods that we have. There is get mapping. So let's try that out first. So let's just try this out, like how this actually happens. Like, okay, this public string, let's say public string uh, hello maybe, okay, and let's just return hi, okay, and this maps let's to the let's say it maps to the slash. Let's run it so I don't see any issues. Let's try to go to our browser, and basically you see the logs over here. What it says is that Tomcat started on port 8080 HTTP with context path this. Okay, started the Spring Boot application in this time, process running now. So we saw that something is running on port 8080, which is the Tomcat server. Right. So if we go here and search localhost 8080, so I have this. Now why do I get the error? We will look into that. But if I see this, like over here, I see this that initializing Spring dispatches servlet, then initializing the servlet, dispatches servlet, completed initialization and all of the stuff. Okay. Now for this part, if we go into basically what is servlets and what is dispatcher servlet, it will take a lot of time. So I'm not going to be like making the video lengthy in order to do that. So you can like research on that on your own. Uh, or if you are like after this video like very keen enough to do some course on Spring Boot, you will learn it over there also. So basically, why did we get an error over here? Is that basically it is like not actually returning this hi. Okay, it is returning something else. Okay, now if you see over here, if I like basically keep my cursor over it, it says that cannot resolve MVC view hide. Okay, let's try to return something else. Let's just follow me for a few minutes and then I will explain it. Let's say I put it as let's say index.jsp. Now I will explain what is JSP and what is what. But let's just bear with me for a second. Then I go over here. Then I create here basically a new file index.jsp. And if I don't think so, I need to do that. Let's say this one. Let's see, does it work? Okay. Okay, so it's still not working. Let's see if there's any error over here. Okay. Okay, let's actually do this somewhere else. There is a problem with that. Okay, so if I go to main and I should create a new directory like that. Then inside this, I will create this. Sorry, just a file index.jsp, then paste it. Then let's see, let's run it once again. Okay, so now there's something over here. Okay, when I reload this page, I don't get an error. I just get something downloaded. If I open this, I see this text over here. Okay, now in order to solve that, just follow me for a few more steps and I will explain it to you. Just go to this site. Okay, and then just search from that Jasper, then click on this Okay, for this basically what you need to do is go over here, then basically wherever you see Tomcat started, just try to find the version of the Tomcat it's using. So if I go over here, let me increase it. Let me see over here basically what version it is using. So I specifically don't see any version over here mentioned, but mostly it's the like the latest one. Or if I try checking in my pond XML, it won't have it over there actually. Okay, no worries, we will go with the latest one. Just click that, open your pom.xml file. Inside this dependency over here, just paste this. Okay, click on this, it will refresh, and once again run it. Okay, now just go to that page, close this, go to that page, reload it, you see this hello. Okay, I close this, I do something like hello from, let's say, Spring. Okay, let's run it once again. Okay, I see hello from Spring. Okay, so now our web page is now live. Okay, I talked about that we will also see that how can we do it through Postman also, so that basically you can integrate it with React and all of those stuff also, instead of like showing it over here also. Okay, so that is what I basically was telling about, but we will look into that also. Now let's see that what happened over here. Okay, now basically this thing that you see, view, what is this MVC view? Let's try to understand that first. Okay, that's also very simple concept. So MVC, you see, if I go over here, so basically MVC for M, it's model. Okay, just a second. Yes, model, then controller, then view, right? So basically what is the M in the MVC? It's model, then view, then controller. Okay, let me keep it this way. Okay, so we already know what is a controller. We have some idea about model, we have seen it, but we don't know what view is actually, and also not actually know what model is actually. Okay, let's try to compare this with our this controller service repository architecture that we have. Okay, now over here what is happening, the request coming to the controller, which is just responsible for receiving the requests. Like over here what we are doing is that we have just created a mapping for this function, so that whenever someone comes to this basically this particular URL, and the type of method the URL is invoked, that is get, so we just call this function. Okay, so this is what a controller is. Okay, now we have the service layer in which we do have the actual processing, and in the repository through which we access the database and all of this stuff, right? Now this response that we have, that is basically returned in some kind of view, right? So if I see over here this view, right, let's just we can return something else over here also, right? But it depends on us, like what kind of view we want to return. So what is happening is that first of all I hit this URL, So the controller receives it. Then basically I do the service layer processing, the repository, data accessing, and all of this stuff. And then basically I return a response in the form of a view. Okay. So basically this view is nothing but the response from the basically the basically from the uh, backend server that we have, right? So I think now you understand what is view. It's basically the response from the server. Then it's not exactly the response from the server. It's just that how you want to show that to the user. That's basically what view means. Then what is the model? So the model is the basically the structure of the, you can say, the structure that is like through which you like uh, do the data accessing part. Okay. Or you can like say that it's like the actual structure of the like the entity that you are dealing with. So in our case, the model that you see over here is this student. So that's why I created a separate model for model package for that. This is our model. Okay. This is our controller, and this is our view. So this is the simplest explanation of what model view controller architecture is, MVC. So this is our view. Okay. So what this basically means is that whenever someone does a get method on the slash URL, just run this function, which is basically a controller, and we do some processing over here. Let's say I call some service layer methods over here, and then I return a view. Okay. And this view is this index.jsp. Okay. Now there are multiple technologies that we can use as like view technology in like Spring Boot. Okay. One of them is JSP. Okay. JSP in Java. So if you search it, so Java Server Pages is a server-side technology in the Java ecosystem that enables developers to create dynamic, platform-independent web pages by embedding Java code directly within HTML or XML content. So what we are doing is that basically, if someone has like who's like actually like who is actually watching this video, you have ever like used EJS in like in JavaScript or like in Node.js when you were learning, if you have like ever used EJS, which is like a templating language, not a language actually, it's just a template engine. So basically it just you can use it to like create web pages very easily without actually creating a separate front end, just to test it out or just to like learn it in the beginning. So the same is JSP also, Java Server Pages, and it needs to be like maintained a particular order, right? So it should be inside this main folder, inside the web app, inside that. Okay. Now another thing that you can use is basically I go over to my application properties. You can mention some other configurations that you want over here also. But we will just for the sake of this tutorial, like this beginner tutorial, we will just go through this. Okay. Now let's say that I want to have something else over here. Okay, let's try something else. Okay, in my index dot like JSP, let's actually try to create a form over here. Let's see, I have input. Let's say um, I have number. Okay, so I'm just like trying to enter the details of a student. So first of all, his roll number. That, then The second thing is name. Sorry, not view. Text. Name. Then again, this should be his age. This should be number, age, then his email, okay. Then lastly text, so phone number, then this should also be phone number, right? And let's just say okay. Let's see how it looks. Okay, so I have it. It looks very bad actually, but don't actually worry about the front end. You can build it yourself. So I have roll number, name, age, email, phone number, the submit button. Okay, let's actually try to do something with this. I do action. Let's say slash create student. Okay, and the method is, let's say, post. Okay. Now if I go run it once again, so now if I run it once again, so if I refresh it now, let's say submitted. So this application has no explicit mapping. So if you see over here, if we go to the logs, I don't see anything, but because the thing is that we have a controller, okay, which can access the slash get mapping, but it cannot access this slash create post mapping. So let's create that also. So post mapping public registry create student. Okay, and over here, let's say, okay, over here what I can do is actually whatever data that you are like passing as the as the input over here, I can catch it over here also. I can just do roll number, I can do string name, I can do string email, string not, let's follow the order actually. Roll number, name, age, string email, string phone number. Okay, and let's just like print the phone number. Maybe let's try to print the roll number phone now. Okay, and let's just return the index.jsp page only. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I go back. So now if I, let's say, enter 101, let's say something over here, something over here, something over here, over here, submit. If I go over here, I should see something, some notes, but don't actually. So that okay, because we did not mention over here. So create student because they should match this one. We just did a post mapping, but we did not mention which URL, right? Let's continue that. So that should okay. I think it started. Okay, let's submit it once again. So I see 110, right? So we are getting that roll number. Okay. Now how this is like resolved is through a concept known as model attributes. So you can go through it much more. Okay. This is like a very simple version. Now let me show you uh, like a magical way of doing this. So instead of like accepting everything, you can use something else, okay, which is known as request body, and just mention which type of object that you are trying to like accept as. Okay, just print this. Okay, now let's actually enter some valid this. Let's just enter something else actually. 57, age 21 maybe. This submit. Okay, there is some error. Okay, so don't see what is the error over here. Okay, so like there is some issue with the browser not calling this like post method on this, because if I try this when I tried this out with postman post request on this endpoint with these, so it did printed the object. Okay, if I let's say change it, so I send it once again, so as you can see it's working. Okay, so what this request body annotation does is that it takes all of the parameters and then it just deserializes them into an object that you can use basically. Okay, so that is what basically this request body does. Okay, so basically with this let's say in our index page we want to also let's say display all of our students, right? Maybe also actually create this student. So how can we do that? It's very simple actually. How did we actually do it in our basically in our like in where we will actually like uh, doing it in the CLI version, right? So how did we do that? Is we just created that student service. So service we auto wire this. So it's kind of like doing the context.getBean thing, same as that. Now instead of printing this, what I will be doing that service dot create or update student and then pass this to a student. Right, now let's try this out. Okay, so if I send this, so that worked perfectly. Let's see if roll number 325 was created or not. Okay, so that was created indeed. Okay, right. Okay, now let me show you another thing. Okay, let's say that instead of returning these views that you're seeing, if you want to like return something like in the form of JSON data, right? In most of the backend systems, you do not return these HTML pages, right? That is like only for beginners when they are learning or for very basic projects, right? But when you're building a full-fledged like application, you build it three tier style, right? You have the backend, you have the front end, you have the database. So the backend only returns like JSON data, right? So how do you do that? So it's very simple actually. Instead of controller, just mention you just mention it as REST control. So just import it. Okay. Now let's just try this. Try this, like what actually happens right now. Okay. Let's try with some other ID actually, not negative one. Let's see this one, 854 send. So just literally sends the string to me, right? Because right now it's sending me JSON data. So if I go to my workbench, so as you can see, the data has been entered, right? So that is working. Okay, fine. Now, how do I actually return some JSON data probably? You will be asking, right? So in order to do that, so what you can do is, let's say I just want to add return the new student that I've created, right? So what, okay, so I need to change this also, right? So now that works. Reload. Okay, so let's say this time it's 246 return. So I see this. Okay, so I see this in JSON data, right? So that is working. I think you can zoom it a bit. Yeah, so as you can see, yeah, so it's working now. So as you can see, I get this data over here. Now let's say let's make it a bit more like, rather than just adding student, let's also like make it a bit more structured. Okay, so how can we do that? Is basically we will just, instead of having a create student, then fetch student, then all of those things, instead of that we will just have slash student, and if we do post request on that, it will create a new student. If we do get request on that, it will just fetch a student. If we do put request on that, it will update a student. If we do delete request on that, it will just delete a student. Let's just build that very simple thing. Okay, now how can we do that? Let's just do this. So this will work with student. Let's make it a bit more clean. Let's do slash API also. It will like make it look uh, like very like uh, kind of like much more professional for you. Okay, let's remove that one, and let's actually create one for the get map. Let's say this is pet student, right? So in this, basically what we are trying to do is let's, I'm trying to fetch by name, right? Sorry, my bad. So let's say that I'm trying to fetch by name. I'm just passing the name, and I have that fetch by name. I pass the name, so that will return a student, because if I go over here, that returns me a student, right? So I need to cache that also, student. Okay, and then I return the student. Very easy, right? Let's try that out. So if I do get, then now this is slash API slash student. Now over here, basically in get request you cannot do this. Okay, let's remove this. Even if you don't remove this, this will be not going in the request. Because in get request, how do you basically specify your queries is something like this. Okay, first of all a question mark, and then let's say the name is, say, send. So let's send. Okay, okay, so I did not refresh it. Okay, send. Yes, there's a internal server error. Query did not return a unique results. 3 results were it. Okay, that is understandable. So we need to fix this over here. So what is happening is that there will be multiple students with the same name, right? there will be a student with the same roll number but not the same name. There will be multiple students with the same, so just return a list of students, right? So if we go here, we just return a list of students, and the same over here also, as simple as that. Okay. Okay. Is it not working? Let's see what is saying at time student. Okay, my bad. Yeah. Okay, let's run it once again. Okay, so let's see, send. Okay, so it's returning me 3 students. Okay, because right now all of those names contain Sayantan. But let's say I try something like creating a new student, right? So if I remove this post and then I bring that, uh, let's say I some other name, right? And then, let's say send. So it created that. Now let's say I go back and get and send. So Rahul is not being returned. So let's say in this time I'll do Rahul send. Rahul is being returned. Very easy, right? Now let me see what else can we do. Okay, now get is done. Now we can do update also. So that is also the same thing as this only. So we will just do date student. This will be put and nothing else. Actually, we just import that and the same as that only. Let's do the delete one also. Delete mapping. Okay. Delete student, and we just delete students. Okay. So delete student. Okay, that is done. So now we have the delete and the put one only also. So I go here. Let's try the put one. Let's remove this. Let's say I want to update the phone number. Okay, so right now it's this. I go over here also. As you can see, the phone number of Rahul is 845. Let's send this. Again, method not allowed because we did not refresh that. Okay, so it's working now. Let's send it once again. It's working. So right now the roll number, another roll number, sorry, the phone number is 124567, and it's updated on the database also. Let's try to delete one also. Let's try to delete this. So send. So it returned this object only. And if I go over to my database, so it deleted that also. So now in our basic web backend that we have created, our post is working, our post method, get method, put method, delete method is working. So in short, basically our controller is handling all the types of basic requests. Okay, we have the service layer also done, which can basically process the data and all. We have basically the student repo, which can basically connect to the database and all. Okay, now this project is like very simple. Okay, in this basically this whole point of the video was not to like make you learn everything about Spring Boot, right? It was to like make you curious about Spring Boot so that you are like curious enough to like explore it. Okay, you actually go on to YouTube and search courses on it and learn from it, or like something some other resources also. So this might feel a bit like simple application for you. So this is like not very much like very much that you can like uh, use right now, okay, even as a personal project, because this is like nothing as compared to what we actually build, right? But this is a starting point, okay? When you create this application, you will actually understand like the controller service repository architecture, the MVC architecture, what are beans, what is IOC container, what is dependency injection, basically what is scope, and all of this stuff, right? And over here, one flaw that I also kind of think is that every time, like I need to pass the roll number and all of this stuff. Okay, let's say that if I have, let's say, instead of roll number, that particular ID is something which I'm not like aware of, which I should not be aware of in the front end. So that should be handled by the backend. So, that should be like handled in the service. So I can do that also. For that, let me actually show you one like basic thing that I was like kind of like playing around with. So uh, just just give me a moment. Let me find it. I think it's somewhere over here. Yeah. So if I go over here, new window. So if you see over here, the same, we have controller, a repository service, and model. Over here we have product and we have cart. I've not actually worked on the cart part, but product part is actually working. So if I go to the controller part, if I go to product controller, this is exactly the same thing that I was like uh, teaching you guys, right? Now, if you see guys, one thing, there's a new thing over here, response entity. You can like search about it if you want, but basically it's just like used to change the status code that you see over here, right? By default, basically what happens is that uh, if there's a successful request, it will show you 200. If not, somewhere in the ranges of 400 or 500. But if you want to change it manually, you can do it using response entity. Okay. And so as you can see, I've done nothing over here actually. It's all done by the service layer, right? So if I go to the service layer, in this there is some kind of service going on, processing going on. It's like not like very blank as what we were doing in our previous application. Or here, as you can see, in create product, basically let's taking the product, then generating a random ID, then setting its ID, then saving it for update product. So doing some more functionality, then this is the same one, then delete, then get. Okay. In this, basically what I'm trying to do is that for the any type of keyword that I'm passing, I'm searching it in the product's name also and its description also, right? Okay. So this is also like a very simple project. Okay. So another thing which I like also want to talk about more is that we did not explore more about JSP, but you can also go through them basically in the start. If you want to like build very simple web applications using Spring Boot and JSP, you can do that. It's really simple actually, so you can check that out also. So I did not spend much time into any of the components, so but still it's like more than 2 hour long video, because it takes time in order to like explain even the basic things. So if you have been stuck till here, like if you have been stayed till the end of this video till here, so just like my advice would be to just like go through Spring Boot once. Okay. If you find this interesting, try it out. Okay. I really find this interesting because the way of working in Spring Boot, it's like really kind of different than Node.js or something like that. And I kind of think that this like can be really powerful if you use. Okay, if we go to the Spring Start page, if you see the dependencies, there are multiple dependencies. Docker, OpenAI, okay, uh, Anthropic, sorry, my bad. Any kind of database that you can think of, MongoDB, even vector database, any kind of thing, right? So I feel that you should test it out, and I hope that you've understood all the concepts explained this throughout this video. So this some part of might feel bit more jargonish, some part might feel very easy. So just let me know in the comments how you found this video, and I will try to improve myself for the next one. So till then, please just show some love, maybe share this video, like this, maybe subscribe, maybe. Okay, so thank you guys.